Starting as teenagers posting football memes, Kit Chilvers and Ira Williams have built Puberty Group into the world's largest Gen Z social publisher, reaching billions of views every month. Their story is a masterclass in identifying trends, understanding algorithms, and building engaged online communities.
And we were contacted by LadBible through DMs. They didn't really realise that we were 16 at the time in school doing our GCSEs. So we have people in India, through to Nigeria, in Europe, America, South America, etc., across the world, of all these people that have built their own pages.
So we are always in the comments, every post, all the time, pretty much every single day.
We discuss how these self-taught founders grew multiple accounts to millions of followers while still in high school, landed jobs at media giant LadBible at just 16 years old, and built relationships with major brands like Subway, GymShark, and Hinge. So today on the podcast, I'm joined by Kit and Ira. Welcome to the show.
Great to meet you, Ian.
Yeah, great to get on with you, Ian.
Excellent. So for everybody listening, can you just explain what is the Puberty Group?
So Puberty Group is a group of 20 different pages. We span sort of multiple different genres. So we have the likes of Puberty and Memes, which are our flagship pages, mainly sort of delving into like pop culture and entertainment. And then we have a variety of different ones in different niches, which include AI through to sort of dad jokes, which is my personal favorite, which is like the largest dad jokes audience. So yeah, we have 20 different pages that span all these different audiences, and we receive sort of tens of billions of views a month, with Instagram being our main platform.
Amazing. And I'm really curious to learn about the journey. I know you guys started when you were really young. I mean, you still are very young, but can you just take us back to how it all started?
Sure. So I'll take this one, Ira.
Yeah,
So it started on 2014 was when I created my first sort of page, and it was I was in school at the time. I was a big football fan, and I got injured, and it was sort of the same time as the World Cup was going on, so the 2014 World Cup. And I'd seen all these different pages on social media sort of beginning to pop off, whether that was like the likes of 433 through to like 9gag, etc. And there were sort of some inspirations into seeing some of the early social sort of pages and platforms begin to grow. And I realized, oh, well, why don't I just give this a go? I was at home, injured from playing football. The World Cup was on. Let me just see if there's something here. And as I began to post, I realized that it was very much like a game. And at the time, I was a big gamer. So I enjoyed playing like FIFA, etc. And as I was posting and starting to understand what the algorithm was, if you got a certain amount of likes, that it could get into the explore feed, etc. If you use hashtags, you could grow. I realized it just felt like a game, and you get more and more likes the more you posted. And at that point, I was probably 5,000 to 10,000 followers in. You sort of become addicted. And this was just while I said, while I was in school. And I sort of became quite obsessed with it, just posting over and over again, getting those thousands of followers. And you end up sort of creating relationships with other people around the world who are doing the same thing. So all these other kids that I had some friends in the Middle East through to sort of South America, where they're all doing the same thing about different footballers, and they talk about different footballers, etc. And as I began to grow it, I realized, Ira, for one, was my friend in school, like my best friend in school. So I was like, oh, you've got to try this out. And he gave it a go and was able to do it too. And as you sort of begin to work together, you get to understand how the algorithm works. And like I said, if, for example, you post a certain footballer, that gets more engagement, etc. So you begin to work these things out, and you're continuously learning. And Ira managed to jump on the gun as well and create his page too. So mine was called football.news, and Ira was I don't know if you want to go into that one,
it's
Ira.
called simply football memes. So I've always been meme related in some sort of way.
I love it.
Yeah, we grew those. So Kit started Football News. I think it would have been April-ish, 2014, and I started Simply Football Memes about 6 months later, after Kit had continuously pestered me saying, "You need to do this. You need to do this." And I was busy trying to be a footballer like every other 14-year-old in England. Eventually realized that wasn't going to happen. So I was like, "Yeah, let's do this." And yeah, got involved, and it wasn't just me. We had other friends who tried it and tried to make pages, but oftentimes it was really difficult. Kit made it sound very easy then, but it wasn't. It was really like you had to start to know people. You had to really pay so much attention to what you were posting and doing. Very much like it is now. It's still a huge challenge. It was just a different type of challenge before. So yeah, we ran those pages. For I'd say a year or two. We were still creating other pages, new pages. We tried things outside of football. But for 2 years, we mainly focused just on football pages, just really understanding how the algorithms worked. Again, even back then, they were changing every 3 months, every 6 months, whatever. I think when we first started, everything was just in chronological, static, and it was all just static content. And within 2 years, by 2016, there was video. There was the explore page changed. There was a full-on algorithm now that just wasn't there on Instagram. So yeah, we really just grew those accounts. And I think Football News obviously started with 0 in 2014. And by 2016 had, I think about, was it 1.5 million, at least a million anyway, by 2016. And my page, Simply Football Memes, had between 500K and a million. And we had multiple other pages and brands that we were trying to grow on Instagram too.
That's super impressive. And were you making much money back in those days?
It was very sporadic, and I don't really think as a 16-year-old maybe you're the best at understanding how brand partnerships work. But we tried, and we definitely were making a bit of money. It might have been a grand here, £500 one month, a grand one month. It would vary. It could go up a lot more. It really depended on the types of brands that were around. And back then there would be a lot of like startups in like football, in clothing or football, and they come to you and go, "Oh, I want advertising," because they're a bit more canny with what they were trying to do, and a bit more, they wouldn't mind sort of finding a unique football page that no one's heard of and advertising on there. So you'd be posting a lot of those, and that's how you generate revenue. Obviously back then there was no like TikTok creator fund or any of those kind of revenue streams.
Yeah, there's an interesting one on that actually. Is I haven't really told this story before, but before I ever received any money, obviously being a football page, the first time I ever received anything from getting from obviously posting on social media was a football. So it was a match, an official match football, which are obviously the premium ones. And I remember taking it into school like one of the next days, and everyone was like, "Oh, how have you got a match football?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, did a post on my Instagram page." And then yeah, it was so just so different to obviously
As a 14-year-old though, that is like that's what you want. That's gold dust. Like you showing that off in school is just such a flex.
I can imagine. And what about being contacted by clubs or players or anything like that at the time? Did that happen?
Yeah, there were several things that happened at the time. Obviously, in social media was still very new. So even then, a lot of clubs hadn't really even jumped on the hype of social media, and players too. So I don't know if you've ever scrolled back through to football players' original posts on Instagram, sort of 2014. They're sort of very different to what they are now. But yeah, it was in 2014. It was still very new, and that world was. Yeah, I think the biggest thing for us that happened in the first couple of years was just seeing celebrities or footballers engage with you. I think, for example, like being a 14-year-old, you're playing FIFA, and then you see like Aubameyang was one of the ones that followed when he was playing at like Borussia Dortmund or whatever, and that was just really exciting, and that drove you to continue going. And yeah, that was like really fulfilling. But at the time, yeah, it was still pretty alien to a lot of clubs, I feel like.
Got it. Makes sense. And then, so after that, am I right in saying you went to work at LadBible?
Yeah, so we'd been posting on sort of social, like I said, social media throughout school actually. So every day we'd post sort of 20 times a day, never really miss a day, and we'd grown these audiences to a size of in the millions, which was great to say. and we were contacted by LadBible through DMs. They didn't really realize that we were 16 at the time in school doing our GCSEs. So yeah, they reached out and we had to talk to our parents, and they didn't really believe us at the start. They were like, what? And then they too didn't really know too much around LadBible, because that was very Facebook heavy, and they'd seen it before, etc., but they didn't understand that it was a proper business. So we went up to Manchester. This was still while we were doing our GCSEs, and we met with the founders, which was amazing. And they sort of took us around the company, and we were sort of sold on joining them. We grew up in a place called Worcester, which is in the Midlands. So they were based up in Manchester, and we decided to sort of take the leap of, as soon as we left school at 16, just move sort of 2.5 hours away from home and live up in Manchester working for them, which was, yeah, really interesting.
Exciting to be on that sort of journey at such a young age. And so what happened after that?
So yeah, we worked for them for sort of like 16, 17 months, which was amazing. And I think one of the biggest things that Ira and I look back on is just, one, being able to understand that growing a page, you can actually turn it into a business, especially back in sort of like the 2016 period of time, especially on Instagram. To us, it was very alien that you could turn something like that and an audience into a brand, or something that actually you could monetize and create a business out of. So one, seeing that in the flesh and understanding, oh, you can really create sort of something that is beyond just a hobby, it was pretty inspirational. And then the other thing that we always reflect on is just brand safety. So for us, seeing the fact that, and again, this was the internet in 2016 when memes were coming up, pretty heavily. We made sure that everything that we did going forward was brand safe, because we knew that, and we were seeing the consequences of other brands across the internet not being brand safe, and then it being much harder for them to monetize in the future, but also build a good relationship, not just with the platforms, but with their audiences too, because you could post something frequently and then all of a sudden ruin your entire relationship with your audience from one post that you thought was funny, but in reality, to a lot of other people, it wasn't. So those were the two really big things that I took away from working at Lad. Don't know if you have anything, Ira.
Yeah, I'd say just from Lad, I think being there so young, you learn a lot of like life skills, how to work with people, those kind of things too that we didn't know, and also just getting to know the industry a bit. I think like brand safety is a big thing, but up until then, our biggest brand campaigns were when someone had just like, I don't even know, DM'd us or emailed us saying, oh, I want to do this post for this much. And then you start to realize like, oh, there's a whole industry here. There's a whole advertising industry that these publishers such as LadBible are doing that we'd never obviously been sort of aware of before. So we learned a lot from that, like just that kind of space, working on campaigns, making memes into campaigns, everything really on the advertising space.
Got it. And then so after that, you left to set up on your own and build it again?
Yeah. So after that, we so how we sort of it went about is we left LadBible, and Kit had set up Puberty. I'd set up MemesArt, and they'd grown and grown and grown, and eventually we're doing really well. And at this point, we're still 2018 sort of time. We're still kind of working out, like finding our feet with how things work, but we've got a good idea from our time at LadBible. So we started to grow these accounts, and these turned into businesses almost overnight, within sort of 6 months of them not really being a thing to being a thing. We're like, wow, this is a full-on business. So we ran them separately to begin with. So Kit ran Puberty, and any of the Puberty pages. I ran MemesArt and any of the Zar pages. And we just started to run them and post them, and start post advertising stuff on there. These campaigns would vary loads of what we'd be working with. I think my first ever big campaign was with EA Sports, which is cool, but it was very rare. Like that was 1 in 100 was a really big company like that. Most of the time, again, it was just small startups. And it'd be companies like that. But yeah, we were growing the pages. We eventually started to hire our friends and people we knew. So we just wanted people we trusted to be around us. And that worked well at the time, because it allowed us to sort of expand our networks away from just like one page. We could run a few. So be running a few pages, putting sort of brand partnerships on there. But we were really, really focused, like heavily focused on growth. And we always like pride ourselves on like the delayed gratification. We focused on like, if I can grow this audience really, really quick, and these people in this community, and they start to grow and they start to tell their friends about this, whether that's through DMs or through like real life, I know I can build something where I'm going to have an audience that's going to last for years. And all I've got to do is just not sell a partnership that's going to annoy them. So we just not sell partnerships that would annoy them. We'd focus on stuff that would keep them happy. And we always stayed sort of, as we do now, audience first.
Yeah, I think sorry, just to tap in, I'll touch in on that. I'd say that was the one big thing that reflecting that we did quite well was we'd drop a lot of partnerships, or not drop, we just wouldn't entertain any partnerships that we know would influence our audience negatively, because we knew and we saw from other people within the industry, etc. And obviously the social media sort of space blowing up, you'd see a lot of other pages, and you wouldn't really call it selling out, because it's not selling out. They're building their own, they have their own lives, etc. They might have their main jobs, etc. Whereas for us, this was a big focus for us. But yeah, we wouldn't really entertain anything that we didn't think could benefit to us long term.
Got it. And how did you scale the team from sort of 2018 to where you are now, 6 years later?
I'll take that one. Yeah, I think a lot of trial and error and learning. I think like it started off as we said, just my parents knew an accountant, so you get an accountant and then you start a business account, like everyone does. You start a business bank account, and by this point we had literally just turned 18, so I think you were only just legally allowed to do it. You start a business account and then you're like, okay, I've got money here. Then you're paying a friend, and I was just paying a friend like a few £100 to help me post in one account, and then that becomes an official relationship, an official job, and they get an official job title. But it really just started off as we had friends who came and worked for us, and then that grew to about 2020, where we partnered with LadBible. So we got back in touch and partnered as partnered on Puberty Group together. And then from there, we got a bit more guidance on how to actually build a team. And what we did there was we put out job roles as you would, but we really thought about what do we need and where do we want to hire people. To start off with, we realized, okay, we're still kind of building our like advertising area up. We wanted to focus on growth and continuing to grow. So we hired the best sort of like social media managers we could find at the time. And then from there, I mean, this is coming a lot more recently to the last few years. We've just thought about, okay, what do we need? What are we not the best at? Where do we need people? And we try and bring those roles in.
Got it. Hiring is really hard. I mean, I know that personally through our own business. How do you find that?
I think it varies. It varies so much, but obviously we now have someone in whose main job is just to help us hire great people. I think a lot of it we found is it starts as trial and error. You eventually learn how to interview people, but I think it's really, you need to just be really, really, really know what you need and know what you want. I think it's a lot easier when you go, okay, I've got this role, and this is the kind of person who's going to fit that. This is the experience they need. This is what they need to have done in there and achieved in what they're doing, and here's the ambitions they need to have. If you can get that, I think when you get them into when you find that person, they'll get into the role and it will work. Whereas if you're unsure on those things, or you don't quite know what you're hiring for, it might not work out as well. And we've always just tried to be really clear and transparent with how we hire people. We're like, this is what it's going to be like. This is a startup essentially. You need to understand that that's a big part of this. And when people are bought into that, they love it and they really enjoy it, and their careers progress so fast. I'm sure you've seen similar in your own businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. I really echo that with all of my team, that having worked at big companies like Disney, where there's a lot of hierarchy, in a startup, you just
Yeah,
take the opportunity and run with it. And I'm sure many of your colleagues have done that, or certainly the ones that have worked out
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things on hiring, so I think there's obviously hiring for, I guess, official roles, right? Official roles being that of like a hiring manager or within finance, etc., which is interesting for us because, like I said, we've gone from not understanding hiring whatsoever to now having to get references and all these sort of things where you're like, oh, and that is a lot of it's self-taught, but also who you surround yourself with, right? Just asking questions, other business owners that you get to meet, etc. But I think one of the most interesting things was how we grew our social platforms through hiring. So one of the things that we did is we would approach a lot of other small social pages, whether they have 30K, 40K, 50K, or creators themselves. And we'd ask them if they wanted to join our business because they normally weren't making enough money to sustain their own living. So pretty much majority of the social media managers we have on our page aren't people that have done social media management for other companies, but they've actually done it themselves for either their own pages or they're a creator, and that's across the world. So we've got people, probably like 7 or 8 people in the UK that do this, that have, like I said, built their own pages. But we want to, and we pride ourselves on having people globally. So we have people in India, through to Nigeria, in Europe, America, South America, etc., across the world, of all these people that have built their own pages. And it's so cool sometimes just to be able to chat to them, because everyone, I guess you can call it on it, right? Everyone is on it. So you just have a group of people that work for you that are just on it. And it's like a group chat of just these, really talented people. And that's like one of the most fulfilling things. And it's not a norm as such, which, that helped us a lot.
That makes absolute sense. And I guess that's how LadBible found you initially, right? Just as having
exactly.
great accounts. So
Exactly. Yeah. Proof's in the pudding.
yes. And you've worked with big brands like Dunkin' and Subway. Can you tell me about sort of what you've learned on that journey?
Definitely. So for us, we, like I said, we went from working with on small like meme campaigns through to doing big branded partnership campaigns with these clients where we're doing bespoke content for them with a full production team, etc. So we've really shifted from doing top low amplification level stuff through to this like high tier, big budget content. And the big thing that always, like we said earlier, that stayed true to us is posting content that's authentic to our audience, or organic, you could say, because anything that looks organic performs well, and that obviously gives the better it performs for us. Normally, the ROI is much stronger for the client as well. So working with brands like Subway through to like Visit Dubai, etc., is amazing because they trust us in creating content that is true to our audience. And that always works both ways for us because we maintain our relationship with our audience. The client sees a good sort of return on investment, and then they just want to keep working together. And it's those partnerships that are so great for us because they're very long term, and we want to work with clients that sort of see us as a long term partner.
It's a win-win-win. A win for the audience, a win for the client, and a win for us.
I like that. And what's your favorite campaign over the years? Can you name one?
Oof. Favorite campaign.
For me, I'd have to go, and it's more so just based on longevity, is Hinge. Just because we've worked with them now since 2019, so over 5 years consistently every single month. That's more of like meme campaign. And it just looks very organic, but it's mostly just the longevity that's great there.
Yeah, for me, after thinking, I feel like the one of the companies that does it best is GymShark. So anything that we do with GymShark is brilliant because they really understand their audience, and they're also willing to take a lot of risk in creating something that might not have been created before. So anytime we work with GymShark, we know that it's going to be something that's fun, that is actually going to be insightful for our audience, but also pretty interesting and out of the box. which is always pretty exciting for me because as soon as the name pops up, you know it's going to be a good one.
That's great. I love it. And I mean, these social media platforms are evolving all the time. How do you stay on top of the trends, and how much of it is sort of the art and how much of it is science and data?
Yeah, it's a mix. It's a big mix. Over the years, for us, it's one you normally see when, especially as you begin to build multiple pages on a platform, you get to see changes almost immediately because you will see those changes on every single page that you own. And if you only have one page that you own, you can normally cross correlate it with other pages in the industry. So say, for example, you're looking at Instagram and your page is getting more reach one month versus less reach one month. You can then be like, okay, let me look at my competitors or another set of pages and then identify if it's the same for them. And that's normally the way that we've worked over the years, just sort of comparing versus competitors versus ourselves, and also having discussions with people in the industry as well and see if they know why one changes like this. A good example that it is Reels. So when Reels came out on Instagram, that was obviously a big one because we realized, okay, Reels is pretty fresh. People might not be capitalizing on them as much as they should. And Instagram are pushing reach on Reels because it's a new asset for them. So we would want to understand what it is that we can continually capitalize on to be the leaders in it. And that's normally, if you're doing that year on year, then obviously it's an incremental really. And you do that over like 10 years. Yeah, it works.
And are you doing that sort of trial and error, or are you in the data just constantly like looking at sort of the different performance?
It's a bit of both, really. It's one, you always have to look at the data because you have to be completely data driven in what you're deciding works. So even when I go back to when I was 2014 and I realized a Cristiano Ronaldo post would outperform, I don't want to say a footballer, but outperform another footballer, right? You then realize, okay, if I posted more Cristiano Ronaldo posts, I'm going to get more engagement and more followers. Obviously, then you realize within the comment sentiment that, oh, I've overposted Cristiano Ronaldo too many times. There's a lot of negative comments because they're saying I only post Cristiano Ronaldo. You draw it back. So it's a bit of trial and error for you to get to that point. But I think everything still has to be data led in some way or some form. So that's something that we track pretty heavily, just to, the more data you have, the better decision making you'll make, really.
Yeah, and to add to that, and Kit's mentioned it already, but it's like comment sentiment. I think it's super important to understand what people are actually saying about the content you're posting, and to understand, like, is it overly positive? Is it very negative? What is it? Because they're the ones who ultimately have the decision on how many views or engagements, whatever you're going to get. So we are always in the comments, every post, all the time, pretty much every single day.
And is that manually reading through them and responding, or is it data and AI analyzing the sentiment? How are you doing that?
It's mainly manual, and the reason for that is just because it's there, but also because we want to see stuff straight away. Because a lot of the time you get the best data, and on pages, obviously this is so dependent on the size of a page or the size of your brand or your account. But for us, because some of them are so big, you get a lot of comments in a short amount of time, and we find that those ones generally, that comment sentiment, very rarely will it like fluctuate and change within the first 10-15 minutes. You kind of know what people are thinking about that post.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think an example of that is we would often, throughout the years of when we were solely growing these pages to the millions of followers, we would look at a post within the first 5 to 10 minutes and see, one, if it had hit an engagement metric of likes, but also what the comment sentiment was, because especially when you're doing a lot of trial and error, you have to understand if there are any negative comments around certain pieces of content. And that was really what swayed us, not just that in itself, but we always wanted to focus on positivity as an angle. So again, in the meme world, you'd call it wholesomeness, right? We always love posting wholesome content because there's so much positivity around it that you would never really see much negative sentiment. Whereas if you're reporting a piece of news, either whether it's political or whatever it may be, there could be negative sentiment around it. So again, it is, like I said, a bit of trial and error, a bit of data decision making that then funds towards where you want to be as a page, really.
Got it, makes sense. And what about, you're part of this White House social media coalition. What's that all about, and how do you work with them?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So for us, it was pretty fun. We were actually asked to go to the White House last year, which was pretty fun, very interesting place. A lot of history there. And yeah, so we work with them very much like most other media companies, really, which is if there is a breaking piece of news that's going to come out of the White House, much like they might work with the BBC, etc., they can give that to us to break on social media, which is really great. So it's nice to have a relationship with them where they trust us enough to be able to be one of the sources to break that news.
It's amazing, amazing. And what's on the roadmap for the business? What are you looking to do next?
So a big thing for us is obviously America. We're obviously two British guys who have grown these audiences and majority of the audience being in the US. And as much as I love the UK, the US is a much bigger market, right? So for us, that's where we see our next steps, really setting foot over in the US, beginning to build out there. And whether that's commercially, obviously, we already have these deals with clients like Chipotle, etc., and some of the movie studios, which is amazing. But being on the ground to actually spend a bit of time with the clients, build out sort of a team that can go and meet them frequently, but also content too, because we're obviously known for reporting pieces of content. But for us, it's taking that content from being static and reporting led through to original content, being able to interview them, build out our own formats, etc., which is there's going to be much more opportunity to do that in the US versus the UK. Obviously, we'll still have a place here in the UK, but do the US too.
And would you rather be on the East Coast or the West Coast?
This is a big one. I
He
think
wants to be in the
East
sun.
Coast. Yeah. I mean, being British, you don't want to go to somewhere that's raining, but for us, it's probably the East Coast purely because of time zones to begin with.
Yeah.
Obviously having a team here in the UK, waking up at 6 a.m. to do calls isn't my strongest suit. I'm more of a night owl, I guess. But yeah, in terms of East Coast, I think there's so much opportunity in New York as well, and obviously you can always travel over to the West Coast too.
That's great. And as you think about social media evolving, are there any trends that you think we might see, or different monetization routes from platforms?
I think like if you just look back at the last few years and how that's changed, I think just the sort of TikTok sort of creator fund, which then became the creator program. Can't remember the exact terminology, but that happened, and that's all happened within a few years. And then Instagram has like a bonus scheme as well, albeit it's more focused on the US. I think there's definitely trends with how these social media platforms will monetize and allow creators to monetize. And I think that's great that it gives you that opportunity. In terms of like social media trends in general, I think those change so quick, and the platforms that people are using the most really switch, and it's so dependent on you as a person around what you use. So trends are really, really dependent. But obviously, as I'm sure we know now, and we've seen, is like TikTok's allowed for a lot more sort of micro trends to happen that maybe weren't happening 4 or 5 years ago. And that's cool for everyone, really, because it allows you to really find people who care about the same exact things that you care about.
That's great. And Kit, Ira, it's been fantastic to hear about your journey. Before we wrap up, do you have any sort of recommendations for, I guess, people like yourself 14 or 10 years ago, wanting to get into the industry, thinking about how they can build a following or make their way in?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest, I guess, a big piece of advice, the reason why we got to where we were, and it's very, very cliche, but it is, especially within social media, choosing a niche of something that you actually do enjoy to either do or be a part of. Because I think we saw a lot of people who had so much potential, but they were choosing different areas that they didn't, that they were forcing themselves to be in niches that they didn't really want to be a part of, and they wasn't true to themselves. So examples might be when we were 14, 15, people, so many of our friends were trying out to be a football page because they saw that we were doing it in school. Everyone was trying to copy it, but obviously majority of them probably weren't football fans. They were just seeing that it was working. Whereas if they pivoted, I don't know, to cooking or something else that was true to them, they might have found a passion there. So yeah, I think for me, that's obviously something that taught me very early on, that I got lucky, and choosing something that I really did was actually very passionate about.
Follow your passion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the nice thing with that nowadays is that can be anything, and there will be people out there who will give a shit. Sorry, who will care about it, which is really nice. And I think that's kind of a newer thing that's you're definitely able to do nowadays.
Very wise
Definitely.
words there.
I would definitely tap into that and say that no niche now is too small. I think you can actually create your own niches within other niches, whereas 2014 you couldn't really do that. Even football boots was a niche at that time that we tried to capitalize on, and it was still a bit too niche. Whereas now you could, social media is so big that you could probably do studs on a football boot and there'll be a niche.
Yeah, and I think just on that, it's just consistency. I think like even before making any money on any of our pages, they were running for like 6 months, a year, probably even longer on some of them. It's just being consistent and trusting the process, really.
Yeah, I couldn't agree
Yeah.
more. Being consistent, I say it to everybody outside the industry. Every creator has just persisted time and time again without an audience.
Yeah.
They've perfected or got better at producing content, and that's how you do it.
It's so true. I think the thing on that the creators do very, very well is using data to make better decision making through the data. I see a lot of people that create videos and they create like 100 videos, and then they're like, "Oh man, I can't do this. It's not working." When they clearly haven't looked at what their one video did well and tried to repeat it. It's just looking at the numbers and be like, "Oh, this did well for this reason," and just continually improving that.
And what would you recommend that they look at in the data? Like what particular sort of KPI?
Oh, I guess it depends on the platform. Normally, if it's a video, you look at retention time, right? And then you look at how long people have stayed to watch at a certain point, especially if it's like YouTube, etc. But yeah, I guess it depends on the platform. But normally, it's like retention time, sends, views to like ratios, etc. Everything like that.
Yeah, makes sense.
Comments again as well. Like
Right.
people are going in the comments saying, "I love this. Do more of this. Do more of it."
Makes sense. Yeah, we obsess over AVD on YouTube and just that retention curve.
I can imagine.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. It's been great to speak with you, and I'm excited to follow the journey. Good luck with it all.
No, thanks, Ian. It's been great chatting.
Yeah, likewise. Great to meet you, Ian.